The goal of the development fee is to cover the overhead. It's not a profit center, but it has to cover the overhead. So if I'm working for the development company, I'm paying myself. There's a paycheck that I write to myself every month and to my team. And the development fee has to cover that paycheck and the operations of the company.
If you're a residential real estate agent earning $200,000 a year and you want to grow your passive income, this show's for you. Learn the secrets other agents use and hear from experts in our field in order to guide you along your journey to investing in assets like apartment communities so that you can turn your commissions into cash flow. I'm Randall McCleard. Let's go, baby. All right, agents, welcome back. I am Randall McCleard. It's great to have you today. I am pretty pumped for today's guest. We haven't talked much development on the show, and so I thought it'd be great to have a developer come on and talk to us about the development market, what it's looking like right now, and the types of returns that they are seeing or what they're working on, just to give you an idea of what that investment opportunity would look like. And so I brought on Eugene Gershman. He's the CEO of GIS Companies. They're based out of the Seattle area, the Washington area, and he's got a ton of experience. He got started back in early 2000s, I believe. And so he was working with his dad through the great financial crisis, and then they came out of that. They were doing single family development, and they got out of that and they got into multifamily. And so that's where they live now. They were doing custom homes and single family developments and that sort of thing. And around 2015, I think is what he said, they jumped into it. So we have a great conversation just talking about his history, what he's working on, what he's seeing in the market right now. And we talk about how he's getting deals done right now. It's challenging on all fronts in real estate right now to get debt that makes sense, that makes projects make sense. And so we really dive into some of the nitty gritty on how he's doing that and the types of deals that he's working on and how he structures them. So you're going to learn a lot on that front. And I know that they're working and he's got some opportunities that are coming up. So listen through to the end so that you can see what they're working on and see if it's something that you might be interested in investing in. So by all means, if you're getting something out of the show, if you're getting value, please go rate and review. It always helps us out. We love having you here and chatting with you and sharing our time and our conversations with you. So thanks for joining and let's jump in. Here we go. Eugene, awesome. Thanks for jumping on. It's good to catch up with you today. I wanted to get started and just have you pretty much introduce yourself and kind of tell us a little bit of history about GIS and where you guys are right now, how it kind of got started and how you got into the development space.
Yeah, absolutely. Eugene Gershman, GIS Companies. I run a development and construction company or companies focused on primarily residential, single family, multifamily. We're a family-owned business. My father started the company almost 30 years ago as a commercial general contractor. He was mostly building all kinds of complex buildings. And I never wanted to be in a family business. Got a degree in business finance, signed up for, joined an investment firm. And then my father lured me into the business by saying something along the lines of, well, I wish I could have somebody I could trust to help me start this satellite office. And I said, well, okay, fine. So that's how I ended up here. Then a few years ago, we went into development. With my business background, I still didn't really want to be a builder. So went into development space and we've acquired a few properties. Those back in early 2000s, started going through primarily here in Pacific Northwest Seattle area.
Yeah,
we're going through permitting, entitlements, which was a lengthy and painful process, us being newbies in the space, in the development space here. And then 2008 happened, market crashed. So we had to kind of reboot, reimagine ourselves. We started a new residential construction company and focused on single family projects. We've since developed a number of our own single family buildings and built them as well, single family homes. And then a few years ago, back in 2015, started working on multifamily projects and essentially branched out. So the company now focuses on single family and multifamily. And frankly, multifamily has been taking more of our time and energy. In the last 2 years, we completed our last big custom home on a construction site about 2 years ago and haven't pursued single family since then. Not because we didn't want to, just opportunity didn't present itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, so very well familiar with all aspects of construction and development side, from property acquisition to entitlements to financing and then final delivery. And I guess that's about it as far as the intro goes.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, there's one thing that just popped in my head when you're going through that is what got you to make the jump? Like, what was the thought process behind getting into multifamily in 2015 specifically? Was there something going on or was it just the market looked right for it, or where were you guys?
The market looked right. I mean, we were still kind of recovering from that big recession of 2008, 2009. An opportunity presented itself. There was a property here in Bellevue, Washington, just east of Seattle. The property looked good. Broker friend of ours called us and said, hey, why don't you tie it up? And we're like, yeah, we're not really into it right now. Like, I still didn't believe in multifamily after the big crash. He said, why don't you tie it up, study it, and then if you don't want it, then give it back. So we were studying it, and the property had all kinds of problems. It had wetlands, it had steep slopes, it had homeless encampment, but it was in a really good neighborhood, good area. And the price was too high. So as we studied it, we went to the city, we had a few meetings, and we said, look, we would love to build something here. Single family probably wouldn't work, but we could look into it. We considered apartments, we considered maybe an office building. But then as we were reviewing the codes and talking to the city, we were able to come up with a deal where we would trade out some of the wetland buffers for an improvement. If we would plant, native species, if we get rid of all the blackberries that were growing there. The city said, look, if you can do all that, we would allow you to encroach closer onto that wetland buffer and let you develop something. But we still wanted at the time to see if we could subdivide it. But the city said, look, do us a favor, don't subdivide it because it's going to take too long. We've got too much bureaucracy. And they didn't say that, but that was me reading between the lines.
The sentiment, yeah.
All right. So we said, okay, and well, we could still build townhomes, except we're not going to subdivide them. We're going to condominiumize them. And that's what we ended up doing. So it was still same property, same construction style. We couldn't build an apartment building, wouldn't have penciled there, but townhomes would have worked. And so they became townhouse style condominiums. And that was our first multifamily project.
Yeah.
So it was essentially building, we call it Park 12 for 12 homes. And because we're building a park, but they became almost like individual homes, but some of them were attached together. So that was kind of how we got into the space.
Yeah, nice. So were they duplex style or were they all like adjoining walls?
Well, all of the above. So 2 duplexes and 2 fourplexes.
Okay. Do you have to sprinkler the fourplex up there?
We did have to sprinkler the fourplex, and I'm trying to remember. I think we also sprinkled duplexes. Actually, you know what? I don't remember anymore.
Yeah. It's a while back. We literally just did it was a 14-unit townhouse style project, very similar. So we kept them all as duplexes so we wouldn't have to deal with that. Condominiumize the whole thing. That was the whole approach to it. So
right.
Familiar with that. Do you guys focus mainly on infill development? Or are you guys branching out now and taking down larger sites outside the cities? Or what are you guys mainly focused on?
Primarily infill, primarily within city limits. We have looked at some projects that are in unincorporated counties around here, but haven't really pursued them.
Yeah.
So the few deals that we have a mixed-use condo project in downtown Bellevue right now that we're finishing up. We recently finished an apartment building in Kent, Washington. That was 150 units, also in downtown area there. It's like a suburban downtown, but nonetheless. And then also have another couple of projects right now under construction in Tacoma.
Yeah, I was looking at the one, I don't know which one it was, but the one that had the automated parking garage. Which one was that? Was that in downtown Bellevue?
That's the one in Bellevue. Yep.
Yeah, that's a really cool concept. Does that just allow you to get more cars into a smaller space? Or is that... What's the...
Exactly. That's the only reason. That building is built on about 4,000 square footprint.
Yeah.
And so the only way to park 20 cars there, 21 cars, is to use that automated system. It's essentially a puzzle box type system where it's got 3 verticals. So in the space that normally would fit 3 cars, we can go 2 levels below grade and 2 levels above grade.
Yeah.
So it's basically a 3x4 matrix that would normally create 12 spots. We removed 2 so that we could move cars up and down, left and right.
Yep.
And so we've got 10 on each side of the drive aisle, plus 1 more ADA spot there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd be curious the numbers on that. Can you sell those spots as part of the deal? Because we don't really worry about that so much here in San Antonio. The parking comes kind of with the deal. But yeah, I was just talking to a guy and he was in the Washington, D.C. area. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about how some of the spots were going from $90,000, $100,000, $120,000 for a parking spot. I was like, man, that's insane.
Oh, yeah. No, that's easy. I mean, if you think about it, in an urban core, people would easily pay $250, $300 a month to park a car.
Yeah.
If you put a cap rate on it, and there you go.
Lifetime parking. There you go. Yeah. It seemed, again, I was looking and doing some research. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed like you guys are working and you're doing some kind of transit-oriented development. Explain that to me, I guess. Are you guys integrated somehow with the transit, or is that just something that I misunderstood?
Well, yes and no. We do like transit-oriented projects for two reasons. One is building parking is expensive.
Yep.
And if a building is nearby a transit stop, state train station, bus transit hub, we feel like we could reduce the number of parking spaces in the building. The idea being that people can hop on the train, get on a bus, and get to pretty much anywhere they need to go in the area. So that's been the main motivator. Like the building in Tacoma that we're working on, it's a 115 unit building with only 53 parking stalls. It seems like it's a very low ratio of parking to a number of residential units. However, there is a commuter train literally right across the street from the building that goes up and down the coast from as far north, I believe, as Everett, Washington, and as far south as, I can't remember. But anyway, it's long. But you get on that train. So if you live in the building and you happen to work in downtown Seattle, you hop on that train. It's about half an hour train ride with like 2 or 3 stops on the way. So very easy. There's also a streetcar that goes around downtown Tacoma, visiting all the major employers, University of Washington, and they're launching an expansion that goes all the way up to their hospital district there. So super convenient. And right next to the building, there's a giant park and ride structure. It's like a 7-story garage for, I don't know, I think a couple thousand cars or something like that. So there's always place to park. The city is still fairly well positioned for street parking if need be. But because of the proximity to transit, we felt like lack of parking, if you will, was justified. So that's one of the reasons. We also had another project. We actually just sold it before it got built. But similarly, it was positioned right next to, about a block away from a new light rail station that's being built. I think they're launching it next year after. But kind of same reasoning there is the population grows around transit. And that's what we felt for to compete for those housing units, then it'd be best if we were positioned close to transit.
Yeah, I want to say I haven't been up there. Has it always been set up with public transport as like a key mode of transportation? Because in San Antonio, it's buses. We don't have really anything else.
It hasn't. I mean, the first light rail was opened, I forget, like maybe 10 years ago.
Really? Yeah.
And maybe a little bit more, but they've been expanding that, spending, I don't know, gazillion amount of dollars to expand the light rail system. The bus network is fairly well developed. They've been growing it. I think the latest trend is they're building dedicated bus lanes and ramps and letting those buses kind of avoid traffic. But commuter train's been around for a long time, connecting 2 major cities, Everett up north with a big port, and then Tacoma down south of Seattle, also Port City. So that commuter train's been around for a long time, but the light rail is being expanded right now.
Yeah. All right. I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, how you guys are structured. You said you're family owned. So are you guys all self-funded as far as the equity goes? You guys raise outside capital? How do you guys structure your deals when you're going to take them down?
Right. So historically, we funded our own deals. Now, as we're growing, obviously, the capital requirements are much higher than what we can do internally. The model of our development over the last couple of years has been partnering with existing property owners who are either less sophisticated or less experienced developers or don't want to be participating actively in a development process. So we would typically come in and we would partner with those property owners. We'd prefer them to have existing entitlements so that we could kind of get into financing and construction. It's not always the case. But then as far as capitalizing, we use several different sources. We haven't syndicated before. It's actually something that I've been researching recently, and we're getting set up to bring in individual smaller investors to open up, investment opportunities. But every deal is different. Typically, we would bring in some sort of a equity partner and then bring in debt capital. The previous projects that we did, we structured them very originally. We actually sold the land to a ground lease company and then put a construction loan on top of that. So we used the proceeds from the land sale as additional equity. But, every deal that we do is different. And, as we're growing, we're kind of setting up this whole other structure to allow individual investors, more passive investors, to come in as limited partners and participate on the upside.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to dig into a little bit of that. First, the ground lease side of it. I'm just ignorant on that front. So you had control of the property. You didn't actually own it. Is that what I understand? The seller contributed the dirt to the deal, and then you guys turn around and sold it to a ground lease company. So what does that transaction even look like? They sign you sign a 100-year ground lease with them once they own the dirt?
Right. Yeah. So it's 99-year ground lease. I don't know why they do 99, not 100, but it's usually a 99-year ground lease.
Okay.
And they paid more than what the land itself was worth. I mean, they have their formulas. There's a few companies that do that, but they have their formulas of how they calculate the actual purchase price. But essentially, it is based on a dollar amount that they could deduct from the operating expenses or from the operating revenues, I guess. They figure out how much the property could afford to pay without sacrificing the health of the project. And then they apply a cap rate essentially on that annual payment to figure out the purchase price. So to put things in perspective, our building was, or the land before the building got built was worth about, I don't know, let's just say $2 million. The ground lease company paid us, I think, a little over $10 million to acquire that. Of course, the land is not worth that much without the building. Once the building is there and it's operating and it's producing income, then the annual payment was a percentage based on an interest rate off of that purchase price. The building would have to pay them for the next 100 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's provisions on escalations. Obviously, every year that price goes up. There's adjustments for inflation that are factored in. But essentially, that's how the deal is structured.
Yeah. And so the 10 million, they don't give that to you day one. It's a financing mechanism, I'm guessing, right? You're going to do draws on it once you get things built.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, they want to give you the entire amount up front and have you disappear, right?
Yeah. Eugene's in the Bahamas. All right. Yeah. So that's interesting because I've heard of that and I've seen some deals. I was reading something about it becoming more prevalent, but I hadn't talked to anybody that's actually done one. So how do you exit that? You're just selling the building at that point, or what's the plan there?
Yeah, you're selling a leasehold interest. So similarly to how you sell fee simple building, you're selling leasehold. So whoever buys it, they're buying a cash flow stream.
Yeah.
Nobody really cares about the dirt or the bricks on top of the dirt. They care about the cash flow.
Yeah.
And so you underwrite that cash flow stream. You do include the lease payment, the ground lease payments into your expenses, just like you would with your management fees and cleaning and all that. So it's just another line item in your expenses. It does reduce your building value, obviously, because your expenses are higher, but it's basically the same amount of money that you received when you sold it. So it kind of equals out.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the goals of the company, are you guys aligned to, we want to buy and hold and we're going to keep these developments for as long as we possibly can? Or is it we're going to build and sell? What's the typical exit?
So we're a development company. Our primary interest is to develop and build a project and then figure out an exit path. Every time we approach a project, we'll look at it from the standpoint of we're going to hold it for, at least 10 years.
Yeah.
But it all depends on the economy. It all depends on how numbers look by the time the building's built and what other opportunities we have. And that's kind of when you evaluate whether you exit and sell it or hold on to it.
Yeah. So I guess getting back on your capital structure for these deals, typically you've said in the past, so you're going out and finding one or two. Is this like institutional money that you guys are going after? Or is it, a family office? Or is it just one connection you have in local markets where you're just saying, hey guys, jumping on this deal? Because you're not syndicating it. You're just going after one or two, I guess, in some kind of joint venture or partnership or something.
Right. Well, so like for this next deal that we're working on, we have a small group of investors partners that are forming sort of our GP, general partners group. And we are soliciting institutional investors, family offices to supply. I guess I kind of equate family offices to institutional in a way. But yeah, to invest as limited partners. And I'm talking to a couple of co-GP groups that are able to supply additional, maybe even guarantees, help us spread the risk around. And then, some sort of a debt structure on top of that.
Yeah, got it.
We're proud to be sponsored by Ridgeline Investment Group. Ridgeline has a track record of transacting more than $53 million in assets throughout Texas. Ridgeline is currently looking to acquire 100 to 200 unit Class B multifamily communities between 5 and 20 million in San Antonio, Temple, Waco, Tyler, and other Texas secondary markets. To learn more about Ridgeline Investment Group, visit www.ridgelineig.com.
So on your developments, this is something I ask a lot. So like on the Class B value add strategy that's pervasive in the multifamily right now, or has been for a long time, I understand a lot of the return profile that people are looking at and offering just because I see these offerings all the time. On the development side, I'd be curious asking you, I don't know what kind of offering you guys are having, if it's like a 506C or something where you can talk about it or not, but I'm just kind of curious what you're seeing on the development side and what type of returns developments are offering compared to, a stabilized property that you're buying that's maybe a value add component.
Yeah, it's funny. As I started researching this whole syndication model and started seeing what other companies are offering, the offerings are so different and they're spread out. I don't even know what metrics to use. One of the most popular that everybody's talking about is IRRs. I actually posted on my LinkedIn recently that this whole IRR thing, it makes me laugh every time I see it because people get focused on it. Yeah. But IRR is important metrics to look at. When I look at projects, they range from, 10, 11% to 17, 20%, 25% IRRs, and people get excited about it. And, being a finance guy, somebody recently asked me, how do you explain IRR? I'm like, well, it's rate of return that you get if your net present value is zero. And they're like, well, what's net present value? I'm like, okay, here we go. So now we need to explain this whole thing.
Have a whole finance class.
Right. But it's not as simple as, I'm making 10% a year. It's just a different way of looking at it. So the way we've structured our offering is I like to always target 100% return on investment. And I think it's the easiest for people to understand that if they invest into a project, they get to double their money.
Yeah.
Now, it's not going to happen overnight. It's likely going to take, 3 to 4 years, and that's typical hold.
Yeah.
And then you can run your fancy Excel formulas and figure out your IRRs or average returns or NPVs. My experience from old finance classes in business school is, so NPV makes sense. It's a net present value where you use a discount rate and you discount every cash flow to the present value, and it kind of makes sense. But then the key question is, well, how do you figure out what the right interest rate to use, what the right discount factor is?
Yep.
And there's another, I think when we did it, there was like a whole huge chapter of the book just talking about how to figure out that interest rate. And I'm like, nobody's going to do that in real life. Maybe large investment firms with an army of analysts can figure this out. But in reality, nobody's going to do that. And, if you talk to somebody like, BlackRock, they've got all these fancy models and big analysts. But in our space, I like to keep it simple. And I say, look, our target is to double the investment during the life cycle of the investment.
Yeah.
And that's what we're targeting. It's simple. It's easy to understand. And obviously, if you double your money in 2 years, it's going to be better than if you double your money in 5 years.
Yeah. Do you guys typically talk about it in terms of 3 on a development deal? Is that your target? You're saying we're usually in and out of this deal in 3 years, 5 years sometimes, 1 year if we're hit a home run or something. I don't know.
Depends on the project. Since we're a development and construction company, most of our projects are ground up construction.
Yeah. Not happening in a year, typically.
Right. It's not happening in a year.
Yeah.
Like we have a building right now that we just finished. It's being stabilized and we are looking to recapitalize it. We're soliciting it to investors. That one, if economy turns around and gets better in a year, great. We'll turn around and flip it then. Realistically, I'm seeing it being at least 2 years, maybe 3. Our other projects that are just getting started, well, it's 24 months just to get it built. And that's if you look at the construction schedule. And that's if you don't anticipate any delays, which there's always delays.
Yep.
So figure 3 years until the building is fully finished, 4 years until it's stabilized, realistically 4 to 5 years to exit.
Yeah. So this is a question that I'm always talking about. Development, you're putting capital out. It's a long-term cycle for you. There's development fees, obviously, that you can charge to the deal that you're taking over time, but it's like an acquisition fee almost on some of these things. You're not living on it. It's not enough, I guess, to cover everything. And so you're waiting until the end to have a big pop. So you have to have a pipeline of deals that you're working on. Some are closing and selling. So how long did it take you guys to get that pipeline going? Or were you working? I guess you could supplement it with some of the single family custom homes that you guys were working on at the time. Like, how did that look for you guys? Or that was just never an issue? Or maybe it's a problem that you don't have or never had.
Well, the goal of the development fee is to cover the overhead. It's not a profit center.
Correct, yeah.
But it has to cover the overhead. So if I'm working for the development company, I'm paying myself.
Yeah.
There's a paycheck that I write to myself every month and to my team. And the development fee has to cover that paycheck and the operations of the company.
Yeah.
Normally it ranges from, 3 to 5% of the construction budget. And we typically front load the development fee a little bit because we are, at least the top principals are involved more heavily in the beginning during the development cycle, and then less so during the construction. So, and then the construction company, same thing. General contractor has a contractor's fee, or GC fee is what we call it. That's basically the profit of a contractor. Now, contractor also has their overhead budgeted in the construction cost. So similarly, the overhead and the daily operations of the construction company has to be covered by the project.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the company wouldn't survive.
Yeah.
And then what we do a lot of times, and what we offer to the property owners that we partner with, is we invest our construction company's profit into the project. And so I'm okay waiting to receive the profit from construction until the building is finished and sold, because I would get more profit by being an equity participant there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how many projects or how many units you guys have currently either under construction or that you guys are working on or own, I guess?
So let's see, one building is finished and 3 more are under construction. One of them, the Bellevue project with automated parking, is going to be completed here in the next couple months. We just released, well, actually haven't formally released them, but we're doing private tours of 2 of the units that are completed.
And how many units was that?
It's only 16 residential units and 2 commercial.
Okay.
So it's a boutique building that's downtown Bellevue, which is kind of like a affluent suburb of Seattle, where Microsoft headquarters, well, technically Microsoft is in Redmond, but we've got Microsoft offices here. We've got Amazon moving into Bellevue, primarily from Seattle, and a lot of growth. Meta has their big offices here. So it's kind of this newer, bigger, wealthier neighborhood.
Yeah, solid hub. And what are those units going for? Do you guys have a price point on them yet, or are you still waiting until that gets a little bit closer to launch?
So we haven't released all the prices yet, but they're going to range from, I think from memory, about $600,000 to over $3 million.
Yeah, nice. And can you fit amenities on that footprint?
It's a small building, so our whole approach is, rather than building out a gym and meeting rooms and all kinds of different facilities that a lot of people don't use, they like the idea of having them. We're saying, look, there's at least 3 gyms within a block.
Yeah.
There's a high-end fitness club about 10-minute walk. There's plenty of restaurants around the city. So we're promoting the lifestyle of this downtown core, which is a safe downtown, Bellevue being a much safer city than Seattle, with all of their homelessness and political issues. But there's a park across the street from the building. There's a library, huge public library across the street from the building. So we're touting the amenities of your immediate neighborhood.
Yeah. A buddy of mine lives in Seattle, and he's been telling me the story about the downtown and the whole what's going on there. But yeah, the pictures of that development and that park, because I saw on your page, you posted some of the pictures. Looks beautiful.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, it looks really good. So you have a number of those going on, projects going on. I guess I want to ask still, well, we got some time, just about if I'm a limited partner and I'm looking at placing some capital into projects in general, if you're buying a stabilized either storage facility or, again, a Class B value add deal and you're putting money to work, you're investing, you get some of the equity upside, plus you get the cash flows along the way. If right now the debt makes that challenging, but if that's happening and there's some cash flow, you're getting some of that cash flow. So like on a development project, what's like an ideal limited partner coming into those projects?
What the ideal partner looks like, or what the ideal deal looks like?
No, like an ideal partner, because again, for me, I could answer that and say, look, if you are looking for cash flows and you're looking for equity and tax benefits of owning a large apartment complex, this is the thing for you. On a development side, I know that there's no cash flows along the way. So unless you have a unique position or ability to generate some sort of cash flow on a parcel while you're waiting for the development to happen, then it's really, you're not getting. So again, in my mind, there's like a perfect limited partner that's looking for some sort of development deal. Maybe they have. Right. Yeah, I'll let you answer. Go ahead.
Well, so the perfect development partner would be somebody who, well, obviously they would have to be a accredited investor, but who would be able to put in, a couple $100,000 into the project and be patient enough to let it work for the next 3 to 5 years until the project, 3 years, I guess, until the project's built and starts generating income. When it starts generating income, then that income can be distributed.
Yeah.
So that would be an ideal person who is looking for an alternative investment. They probably have some investments in stock market. Real estate investments are typically different. Sometimes they're counter-cyclical to what's happening in the stock market. So it's a great way to diversify. And obviously, they need to be sophisticated enough to know the risks and appreciate the risks, but also to enjoy the upside. Now, having said that, We have been talking to several individual investors in the past. And one of the requests that came in was to see if we could structure a deal where they could be generating income sooner than when the building's built. And I've been actually studying that model. There's a way to get that done. Essentially, we would have to raise enough funds to put together an interest reserve of sorts, where we would be paying out interest ongoing to these investors. And that would be one way of showing that recurring income stream and distributing those funds sooner. Now, it is kind of a game, if you will, because yes, you are paying interest, but it's not real income. You're essentially borrowing money to generate income until the project is built. So it does have its drawbacks when you structure it that way. So we haven't executed that structure yet, but we've considered it.
Yeah, I think that would be challenging because, the cost of capital just goes up simply to be able to pay that individual. It may be worth looking at another type of investment. But it depends. Have you guys brought any pref equity in? I mean, just in general, let's talk finance on these development deals. Like right now, if you're going and putting debt on a project, on a development project, what were the rates, I don't know, a year and a half ago? And what are they now? What are you seeing? And how has that changed or affected your ability to execute projects?
Right. So the most challenging thing with debt financing these days is not only interest rates are high, but also not a lot of lenders are lending. And those lenders that used to be lending, their interests are so high that they're just prohibitive. So typically there's two types of players in the debt market. There's some commercial banks, which commercial banks are traditionally less expensive. They usually do require personal guarantees, which not a lot of project developers are comfortable with. Then there are larger institutional, like life insurance companies that finance construction. They typically work with larger developers. We haven't been able to get a life co to finance any of our projects yet. And then there's been a lot of debt funds, which are essentially private lenders. They're not hard money lenders per se, even though some of them almost act like that. But they are private lenders and they just have expensive capital.
Yeah.
And those range, they used to loan from, 8 to 12% interest. Today, they're between 12 and 15. Those are typically floating rates. They're usually SOFR based, and then they have a markup on top of SOFR. Some of the larger ones that we've seen is SOFR plus 9.5, which today SOFR is, I think, at 5%. So that would be pretty close to 15% interest, which would be prohibitive for most structures.
Yeah. So how are you getting deals done? That's a question.
It's hard. So it's a constant search for capital. Well, and another thing is your debt proceeds are getting reduced.
Yeah.
So in the past, if you could borrow 70% of the cost, that'd be great. These days, you'd be lucky if you can get 55, 60% loan to cost.
Yeah, I was wondering on that side as well, because it's gone down on some of the Fannie products that were the deals that we were looking at, but I just didn't know. On bridge debt, we have seen the same. I think the last one I saw was about 12.5.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of those guys were doing like 90%. Some were doing, like crazy numbers, but those have all dropped to 68 to 70 max is what I've seen lately for the stabilized.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, and what they're doing on construction loans too is they're sizing your takeout. So they're using agency takeout metrics to see what you can get out of when the building's done.
Yeah.
And capping your loan proceeds at that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's interesting. So, again, I'm still like, how are you getting things done, man? I just so did you have these projects in the pipe before the rates started creeping up? Or is it just you're still finding a way to make things happen with the private lenders?
It's just a lot of phone calls. It's a lot of conversations. It's a lot of fancy structures. Things that I've been researching recently is C-PACE loans.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with those.
I honestly heard somebody talk about it the other day, but if you want to tell me about it, that'd be great. What is it?
So I'm no expert on them, but my understanding is it's a loan program funded by, I think, Department of Energy. And there's a few private lenders that I'm guessing they get their funds from the government. The goal is to finance sustainable, environmentally friendly buildings and to stimulate the sustainable development. They could fund up to, I think, about 30% of the project cost. And they're treasury based. So I think there's a markup over treasury. So recently the interest rates on that were about 6.5%, 7%, if I'm not mistaken, on C-PACE loans.
Yeah.
The trick with them is they are recorded similarly to property taxes. So they are attached to your annual assessments.
Yeah.
And in that regard, they become superior to your senior lender. So not a lot of senior lenders are comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Because senior lender wants to be in first position. The way that C-based companies are selling their product is to the lenders is, look, even though we are technically superior to your lien position, our loans don't come due in case of default, and they can be assigned to the next lender, or they can stay there and you can just pay us our monthly interest for as long as necessary. But in case of default, you can still foreclose on the loan and we can stay in the deal. You don't have to pay us off at the time. So I've seen some commercial banks and some private lenders accept that, but it's still, fairly new product.
Interesting deal, because even if they took it back, they'd still be beholden to that. It's not like they could wipe that out,
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know that's how those worked. You haven't used one yet.
We haven't. No, we're actually talking to one of the companies right now to see if they could be a player in our next project.
Yeah.
And right now going through modeling pro forma and they're sizing their loan. But still on a blended rate, it's less expensive than a debt fund. And that's kind of how we're looking at it, is we could blend it with a debt fund. So we could maybe pay 12% to the senior lender, 7%, let's say, to a C-based company, and then supplement that with pref equity, LP equity.
Yeah.
It's still expensive these days. I mean, it's not like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
You can get projects funded with.
What are you seeing on pref equity then, like on a development? Because recently I saw this is 6-7 months ago. It was like an 8 to 9% on pref equity. And then I saw another one the other day, and I don't know if they just had this deal. They had the guy buy the short hairs, it was like, but I think they were coming in at 15% or something on pref equity. I was like, wow, that's a massive increase. So I don't know if that's the same, what you're seeing, or.
There's such a wide spread.
Yeah.
It honestly depends on the company. And usually if the interest rates are low on pref equity, and pref equity is also, some of it acts like LP, some of it acts like mezzanine.
Yeah.
So it depends on what the structure is like. And, terminology is blurred here. I actually have to look at how it's structured. But I've seen it range to 15, 17%. I've seen it as low as 7%. And then some require payments in real time, and then they accrue the rest of it. So, they might ask for 15%, but you have to pay like 7 now and then accrue the rest.
Yeah.
And in that regards, they are almost like an LP capital. So
all over the place.
Yeah, it's all over the place. There's so many different companies and there's so many different caveats to the terms that you kind of have to read through the entire agreement and understand it. And it makes it complicated because you can't just compare term sheet A with term sheet B. On the surface, you kind of have to plug in the numbers in your model and see which one works best for you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we're getting close to the end. I just want to ask you about, what are you most excited about right now in the real estate space? Kind of wrap it up with some positive energy here. It's like, what's happening that...
What am I most excited about?
Yeah.
Well, interest rates are still going up. Real estate prices are going down. Honestly, what I'm excited about is I'm almost kind of hoping for a recession or slowdown, just because I'm hoping for construction costs to come down a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm already seeing subcontractors calling and asking for future work. I'm seeing projects being canceled because developers can't either get their projects to pencil with interest rates and construction costs. So I'm actually excited to see some declines in, I don't see materials coming down in price. Even if our inflation gets stabilized here, I don't think materials are going to decline in price, but I do see labor coming down a little bit, subcontractors maybe taking less profit so that we could start building again.
Yeah.
And kind of repairing that balance between values, exit values, and actual cost to build.
Yeah. So I heard something the other day, and don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much, but there's a stat that the majority of contractors working, at least in the single family space, have aged out almost, and we're not replacing them with younger, the 20-year-old on the job site type guy. It's the 50-year-old, 40-year-old guys who are, getting close to the end of their working lives. And so that's also keeping the prices high because there's less of them. So I don't know if you're seeing that or if that's something that you guys considered, because that may just completely wash out the need for a reduction in the price of labor.
We've definitely seen it. I mean, I've seen it first time back in 2010 when a lot of the guys just retired or got wiped out in that big recession.
Yeah.
And it took years for new labor force to come in the market. What's happening right now is construction management jobs are, especially in our region, are in such high demand that, I mean, architect students are going into construction management because they're being paid more. Everybody's going into construction management. Well, as a result, there's not enough guys in the field. There's not enough experienced superintendents that can actually run the job and know how to build a building. There's not enough trades. There's not enough carpenters that are skilled enough and experienced enough to go into management. So that's the biggest hole right now in that labor force.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, look, I could chat with you about this all day. It's fascinating. I'm going to connect any of your information down in the show notes. So if anybody wants to reach out to Eugene directly, please, by all means, reach out to him. As you can tell from this conversation, it's a wealth of knowledge. Sounds like you have some things coming up that are some investment opportunities. So definitely reach out and connect if you're looking for somewhere to put some capital. It might be a good place to start. Yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah, again, thanks for jumping on. I usually ask some questions sometimes. So I'm going to ask them of you just because I'm curious. We didn't really get into too much about Eugene. So what's your favorite pastime not related to your work?
Well, I've got 3 kids, so that's taken up a lot of my time.
Right on. Yeah.
But I like music. I play some guitar. So, I like to just lock myself in a room and strum a few chords.
There you go. Nice. How old are your kids?
15, 11, and 7.
Okay. Yeah. Nice range.
2 older girls and a younger boy.
Awesome. Yeah. It's good ages. I guess with the family, like what's something awesome that's happened with the family in the last, 60 days? Best memory that you guys have?
Best memory in the last 60 days? Oh, I don't know. Well, 2 of my girls are playing music. They're going to School of Rock. And so we just had last weekend, we had their final season show at Hard Rock Cafe Seattle. So that was a cool venue. And, we saw them play music by Stevie Wonder. So that was kind of cool. Awesome. That was probably the highlight.
Awesome, man. That's very cool. Well, congrats to them. All right, man. Again, good catching up. Eugene, good getting to know you. By all means, if I can do anything for you, let me know. But I appreciate you jumping on.
Yeah. Thank you, Randall. Pleasure being here.
Have a good one. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Surprisingly, most of the agents we speak with got into real estate hoping to gain passive income and become work optional. However, only 1 in 5 ever start investing. Most are simply too afraid to start. Once you get educated by listening to this show, you'll be able to overcome that fear and become the 1 in 5 who are finding financial freedom. Don't miss a single episode. If you want to stay up to date, the best way is to make sure you're subscribed. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do it now. And we'll catch you on the next episode.